Hi, welcome to video number 4 in our music theory rhythm practice play along. Let's do some review on some things that we've talked about in previous videos, but we're going to go into more detail. And these notes are actually in your music resource packet that you have in your band binder. So it would be good for you to pull that out right now and go ahead and follow along and look for these on the pages. This is in much more detail, so let's start with ties. So this is a review of ties. A tie is a curved line that attaches two or more notes of the same pitch. Ties add note values together and are played as one unbroken note. Multiple examples of counting tied notes are given below, and we were going to think of these as in if they were in 4/4 time. The half note receives 2 beats, and then it's connected to a quarter note which receives beats, so it's 2 beats plus 1 beat for the quarter note, and we're going to hold that out for a whole 3 beats. Now here we go, is we got a quarter note tied to an eighth note. Quarter note receives 1 beat, eighth note receives half a beat. 1 beat for the quarter note plus half a beat for the eighth note, and we get 1.5 beats for the tied notes. We're going to hold that out for 1.5 beats. And just a reminder, this is actually the same as if we were to have a dotted quarter note, a quarter note with a dot. It equals the same as this. Now, let's go on here in this example. Slur. A slur is a curved line that attaches 2 or more notes of a different pitch. The first note under a slur marking is to be tongued, and all remaining notes should not be tongued. So we look at this example with 2 quarter notes, and then we have a slur. These are different notes, so we're going to tongue this to and go to the next note without tonguing and just using our air and buttons. And then we have another example here on the bottom with more notes under that slur marking. And we would tongue that first one, but we would use our air and not tongue the rest of these, just using your buttons. 2, and if there was another measure just like this with another slur marking, then it would be 2, 2. So you would tongue that first note again and that second measure that showed up. Major and chromatic scales. We're going to go into more detail about major and chromatic, and there's some examples below. And a major scale is based on a specific series of whole steps. It's a pattern of whole steps and half steps, and that's all major scales, and we'll talk about that in more detail in the next slide. A chromatic scale is only half steps. It's all half steps. And a half step is the smallest distance between 2 notes in music. And a whole step would be 2 half steps. So, and it says that right here. A whole step consists of 2 half steps. A half step is the distance between 2 adjacent keys on the keyboard. Now, let's go break this down on the keyboard a little bit more. It shows you the distance between these 2 keys is a half step. From this one to this next key to the right is a half step. Now we can do this the opposite way. If we start on this key where my cursor's at and we go the other way down to the left of the keyboard, that's also a half step down, or you can go a half step up. And you go, hey, there's no black key in between these 2 keys. Well, that's also a half step. So that's anytime you go 1 key over, the next immediate key over, either to the right or the left, that's a half step. When you go 2 keys over, 1, 2, that's a whole step. Let's say you do it backwards to the left, 1, 2, that's a whole step down. And that is how we see it on here. So the distance between these 2 notes is a whole step. And they show you right here, they're pointing to this key, which is B natural on the piano. And then they're skipping to this one, which is 1, 2 keys over, and that lands us on the note A on the piano, and that would be a whole step. Between B and A is a whole step. Now we're going to look at these patterns in music. The following is an example of a major scale starting on C the placement of whole steps and half steps are marked. So the pattern for all major scales is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. So there's 2 whole steps followed by 1 half step, 3 whole steps, and then a final half step. And we see this. So this is treble clef and bass, both the C major scale. And we go C to D is a whole step, D to E is a whole step, and then E to F is that half step. Then we go F to G, whole step, G to A whole step, A to B, a whole step, and then the final step is a half step to the top. So then you get do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And there's actually a little song that we learn in solfege. If you've ever had a chance to do it, and I know I've probably shown you that, but I'm gonna sing it for you right now if you don't. Do, re, major, second, do, mi, major, third, do, fa, perfect, fourth, do, sol, perfect, fifth, do, la, major, sixth, do, ti, major, seventh, do, perfect octave. And that's just a good way to think about the intervals. And it tells us the number of notes. So from the first note to the second note is the second, and the third note's the third, fourth note is perfect. And that's about intervals, but these are whole steps and half steps that we kind of talk about as the pattern on how to build the scale. And then what I just sang for you is how we think about the distance between these. So these are the patterns to build scales, and then what I sang was the distance between each note. Now the following is an example of a chromatic scale starting on C in both treble and bass, and it's going to go up the scale, and you see each note, there's a half step in between each note. And when we go up the scale in chromatic and we write this, we're going to see the accidental, the sharp accidental, because we're raising the note a half step. And so it would go all the way to C. In this example, it doesn't go all the way to C, but if it did, it would go all the way to C if it was the whole scale. And then to go back down, when we write the scale going down, we use flat symbols. So going up, we use sharp symbols. Going down, you will see flat symbols. So the notes will be a little bit different because we're going to be using enharmonics, which is the same note. It sounds exactly the same, and it just is spelled differently. That's what enharmonic is. So if we were to go from C to C sharp, that is the same as D flat. If we were to go backwards from D to C sharp, we wouldn't write it as C sharp going down, but we write that as D flat. So it would still be, it would look like a D, but it would have the flat symbol. So it looks different when you go down the scale. This is just when you go up in this example. Dotted notes. So quick review on dotted notes. We're adding half the value to itself. And there's multiple examples, and we're going to think of these in 4/4. So half notes, 2 beats. The dot adds half of 2. So 2 plus 1 equals 3 beats. It gets a little trickier. The quarter note receives 1 beat. Half of 1 is half. So 1 beat for the quarter note plus half a beat for the dot equals 1.5 beats for the dotted quarter note. Now we get to a little bit more complex rhythms, and you'll see these in more advanced music. The 8th note receives half a beat. The dot adds half of half to the note. So that would be a quarter. Half a beat for the 8th note plus a quarter of a beat for the dot equals 3/4 of a beat for the dotted 8th. So you can actually think of these as 3/16 notes all tied together. So one quarter note would actually would be equivalent to 4/16 notes, one enda. And you could fit 3 of those 16th notes in this dotted 8th note rhythm. And that's usually why when we see these rhythms, it's either followed by 1/16 note and it's beamed together, or the 16th note is at the beginning and it's beamed together the opposite way, okay? And that's all we have for our music theory. Let's get ready to practice rhythms. Hi, welcome to another installment of rhythm practice. We're going to do some more advanced rhythms. There's 8 notes and tied 8 notes and syncopation, where there's a lot of stuff on the offbeat. And we're going to be doing some 16th notes. So always be looking ahead to the next measure that is coming. And let's get ready to play. The metronome set at 76 beats per minute. And we're going to do this on one note, concert B flat. All right, horns are up. 1 and 2 and 3 and... All right, that's it. I would suggest that you look at that maybe a few more times. This is more advanced rhythms, and I hope you're staying healthy and safe. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.